Hi there. This video will go over the Extended Constructed Response rubric. There are several different question types that students may encounter on their STAAR test. One of these is the Extended Constructed Response question, better known as the essay. The essay question is worth 10 total points of the student's STAAR. The essay is scored using a 5-point rubric. That rubric is scored by two separate scorers, and the scores are added together for a total of 10 points. The prompting questions that students will receive will look very similar to the prompting questions that we've been providing all year long in our prompt analysis station. After reading the prompt, students scroll down and type their answer in the text box that's provided. The character count for the essay is in the lower right corner. Students have up to 2,300 characters with which to type their essay. The resources for teaching the essay that we've provided align really well with what the rubric is looking for in order for students to score well. And so we're going to go through that rubric now, and hopefully you'll have a good understanding of how our instructional activities that we're doing in class align with helping students to score well against this rubric. The rubric is broken into two sections. First, the Organization and Development of Ideas section, and second, the Convention section. It is really important to understand that a student must score a 1, 2, or 3 in the Organization and Development of Ideas section in order to score any points for conventions. So if a student does not score a 1, 2, or 3 in this first orange section, they may not receive any points for conventions. So it's important that we look at the Organization and Development of Ideas section first, because again, if they score a 0 here, they have to score a 0 here. Even if they have words that are spelled correctly and their capitalization is great. 0 for ideas means 0 for conventions. So let's look at the 4 criteria categories that are in the Organization and Development of Ideas section. The descriptors in the top row relate to whether the student's thesis is clear and fully developed. The descriptors in the second row relate to the organization of the essay and whether it is effective. The third performance descriptor row relates to the student's use of evidence. And the bottom row relates to the student's expression of ideas. How do they put it all together? What is the reasoning they use for their evidence? And is the overall quality of the essay effective? So after considering all these descriptors, you're going to decide if the essay should get a 3, a 2, a 1, or a 0 for the Organization and Development of Ideas. And you're going to determine your score in the Organization and Development of Ideas section holistically. So for example, if you provide a 3 for the thesis, but you're thinking that the rest of it is more in line with the descriptors in the 2 column, then holistically, this section would be a 2 for this essay. So for another example, if the thesis is there, but it's only partially developed and the essay doesn't have great organization, the evidence is mostly irrelevant or insufficient to support the thesis, then holistically for this section, the essay would score a 1. Just because the student has a thesis statement does not automatically mean they get a 1. You notice here, if you look in the performance descriptor for thesis in the 0 column, it says that a controlling idea or thesis or argument may be present. If all they have is a thesis sentence, but the rest of it is missing, that would score a 0. So here are some other reasons why an essay might score a 0. Like I just said, they may have a thesis, but nothing else. They may have written a beautiful 4 or 5 paragraph essay that is completely off topic. So if it does not respond to the prompt, you would score a 0. If it provides a summary of the article or the text that the essay is asking about without addressing the prompt at all, that would score a 0. And it's important to note that if the student writes in Spanish or another language, we have to score that as 0. Even if you're able to read the essay and you can tell that the student responded appropriately to the prompt, if it's in another language, it should be scored as 0. If the thesis is in response to the prompt, it doesn't have to be a great thesis, but but if it's on topic and the student made an effort to provide evidence and explain their ideas, even if there are some confusing qualities to the essay, it will score at least a 1. So overall, ask yourself, did this student understand what he or she was being asked to write about? Did they make that attempt? And if so, then we're likely looking at least a 1 for this section. Beyond a 1, we have to ask ourselves, how well developed is the student's controlling idea or thesis or argument? Is the organization of the essay purposeful? Is it logical? Is the evidence that the student provides on point with the prompt? And were they purposeful and specific in their word choice? Did they attempt to craft it with some quality and clarity? These are all things you'll ask yourself in determining whether the student receives a 0, 1, 2, or 3 for organization and development of ideas. The essay students are asked to write might be an informational essay or an argumentative essay, and there are some specific features that will be looked for in the rubric for the argumentative essay that I want to take a moment and point out. For students in grade 8 through English 2 who are asked to write an argumentative essay, that essay should include a counter-argument that is identified and refuted. And you'll find that in the descriptor that is in the thesis row of the rubric. You can see there in the number 3 column, it says for grade 8 through English 2, counter-arguments are identified and refuted when the essay is expected to be an argumentative essay. And there's a couple examples of what a counter-argument or rebuttal statement might look like in a student essay. They don't need to necessarily have a whole paragraph for it, but they do need to acknowledge it, and it can be in 1, 2, or 3 sentences where they're just acknowledging that some people might think, and they express the opposite opinion to what they're writing about, and then they make some kind of statement that shows why that thinking is faulty, or why for some people that's not always the case, or something along those lines. So again, grades 6 and 7, they may be asked to write argumentatively, but they're not expected to have the counter-argument identified and refuted. Grade 8 through English 2, if it is an argumentative essay, then the counter-argument should be identified and refuted for it to get a 3. The counter-argument identified but maybe not refuted would be in the 2 column. And then if the counter-argument is not identified for that thesis row, it would be a 1. Another unique case may be if students are expected to write an essay in response to a paired text. All students will have a paired text on their STAAR test, and sometimes they may be asked to write an essay that uses evidence from both texts in their response. So to receive a 3 in the evidence descriptor row for that, they must draw evidence from both texts. For a 2 in the 2 row, you'll see that they may have evidence from at least one of the texts, or that demonstrates a partial understanding of the comparison writing. And then in the 1 column, evidence is only drawn from one, or the response reflects a limited understanding that this was a paired text writing. And lastly, students may receive an ECR prompt that asks them to respond by writing a letter or correspondence to a specific audience. In that case, the body of that letter should reflect the essay that they've been writing, but they would start it out with a greeting to whoever the specific audience is, and they would end the letter with the closing that includes their name. And just to say again, if the student scores a 0 for organization and development, they have to score a 0 for conventions. If they receive a score in the organization and development of ideas section, that doesn't automatically they'll get a 1 in the conventions. They may score something in organization and development of ideas, but still receive a 0 in conventions if they are not demonstrating a good command of grade level writing. You'll see in the performance descriptors for the conventions, the student who receives a 2 should demonstrate consistent command of grade level appropriate conventions. The writing for a 6th grader doesn't look the same, or shouldn't look the same, as the conventions used by an English 2 student. That doesn't mean, though, that the writing has to be perfect in order to receive a 2. A response can have a few errors, and errors that don't impact the clarity in the overall understanding of the writing, you can still give those a 2. So for example, let's say you gave an essay a 2 for the organization and development section and a 1 for grade level conventions. The total rubric score would be a 3, and 3 would be the score that you would put into EduGence. EduGence will automatically double the score for the ECR, giving the student total number of 6 points in this example. But you don't put the 6, you just put the 3. You score it against the 5-point rubric, and EduGence will double the score automatically. You can see how claim, evidence, and reasoning align really well with the rubric that students are going to be scored against on the ECR. And the overall 4-paragraph structure aligns with the performance descriptors that speak to the organization of the essay. When we're instructing students and helping them prepare to write their essay for STAAR, we're teaching them that it's a good idea to have 2 good body paragraphs in their essay, and we want that 4-paragraph essay structure. But you'll notice the rubric doesn't actually say that they have to have a 4-paragraph body essay. It doesn't talk about an exact number at all. It says that we need a claim, evidence, reasoning, and a logical organizing structure in order to express the ideas in response to the prompt. So by helping students understand that this could look like a good 4-paragraph essay, we're setting them up for success, because we found that students that follow this formula, if you will, or this structure, are going to score better than students who leave it to chance. This example essay here was taken from a student's STAAR test, and you can see how the student included all the components that we're working on when we're trying to teach the essay skills, and this student scored a 10. So that's it for this video on the ECR writing rubric. Hopefully you feel a little more comfortable understanding how the organization and development of ideas section works and how it aligns with our classroom instruction. When you're scoring your essays, if you have questions or need some support, of course you can always reach out to us and we will help. But the best thing is just justify it against the rubric. If you're in doubt, look to what the rubric says, and you'll get better at it as you do that. Thanks so much for listening.